Hey, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Welcome to our webinar on surviving social distancing with social connections. I am Christy Kotak, and I'm the Director of Alumni Relations at Roosevelt. And although we cannot be joining on campus today for this event, I brought a little bit of the Roosevelt campus with me in my background. I just want to take a moment to say that I hope that you and all of your loved ones are staying safe and healthy during these challenging times. These times are certainly presenting some very big challenges, but I know that I found that with these challenges, there are also some really big creative ideas to bring communities together that are emerging, like this afternoon. So we are very excited for you to be here because you are a part of our Roosevelt community. So thank you again for joining us. A few items I just want to share before we get started. One is that this webinar is being recorded. So we will be able to share this with those of us who were unable to attend at this time. And that'll also give you an opportunity to go back and visit the webinar if you'd like. And next, we also will be using our chat box during the webinar. Our presenter and moderator put a tremendous amount of thought into this webinar and the topics that are going to be discussed today. So they do want to make it very engaging and interacting. So feel free to chat in your questions in the chat box during the webinar, and we'll get to them as quick as we possibly can. We will also have a Q&A at the end of the hour, so you can certainly feel free to answer any questions at that time. So I would like to first introduce our moderator, who's going to be presenting some of the polls that we'll be discussing throughout the hour. Anne Bressingham, who's our Chief of Staff, the Chief Operating Officer at Roosevelt, and she is also the former Vice President of Human Resources at Robert Morris University. And then our wonderful presenter, Mablene Krueger, who's the Chief Operating who's waving with that beautiful green background, Chief Operating Officer of Roosevelt University Schaumburg campus, and the former president of Robert Morris University. And I also have to say these are two amazing leaders. I'm very thankful that you both are here with us today. They also recently shared with me that they're teachers at heart, and I know that you will certainly feel that over the next hour. So without further ado, Mablene, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Thank you, Christy, and I hope everybody can hear me okay. If you can't, just use that chat function and let Christy and Ann know, and they will certainly alert me in some way. Can I just start by saying I miss you guys. I miss you. It's not quite the same doing virtual calls, but boy, technology has come a long way, hasn't it? And part of what we want to talk about today is maybe how we can think a little more proactively about using technology to our advantage, particularly right now. Let's first take a moment and thank Christy for that introduction. It's been a pleasure working with Christy at Roosevelt University, who manages many of the alumni operations components of Roosevelt University. So if we can raise our hands and clap, even though she can't hear you because you're all on mute, right? Thank you. And as you know, at the bottom, you can also share a reaction of clapping hands. Do you see that on the bottom? If you're new to Zoom, it's down there too. And you can clap. And Anne, thank you for joining us today as well. You received this invitation for one of a few reasons. Really, the main reason is you're a friend of Roosevelt University. We intended for this brief discussion to be something fun we could do as an outreach to our alumni, and we were very, very pleased to have so many alumni respond positively, and almost as many faculty and staff and friends who are not particularly alumni. Remember that our alumni now are thousands and thousands of Roosevelt University alumni, which now include thousands of Robert Morris University, Illinois alumni. So we welcome you. Those of you who came over from Robert Morris might remember me as the president or the provost, or if you're old enough, a faculty member. And of course, Ann Bressingham, our former VP of HR, was a longtime faculty member at Robert Morris as well. So welcome. Ann and I wanted to do this to meet more and more of our alumni at Roosevelt University. Part of our goal for the future is to really become integrated with our community a bit more, and more than we've been able to in the past few years, particularly in the northwest suburbs. If I might ask those of you on the call today, if it is possible to turn on your video, let's do that so that we can see you. And I promise this is a no judgment zone. So if you didn't have a chance to comb your hair, no judgment. I'm biting my tongue because I see a few of you who I know pretty well, and you know I want to say something, but you know I'm going to hold it for right now. As Christy mentioned, this will be recorded just because you'll want to see my face at some point in the future, right? And this is intended to be interactive. While it can't be interactive from an audio perspective, because I don't know how to handle that many people talking at once, and then, you know, I lose control, which I don't like very much. But we will be using not only the chat function, but also several polls throughout the next half hour. And Ann is in charge of running the polls, and we're very eager to hear some feedback from you. So let's get started. Ann, I believe you have a couple of polls ready, so we can find out a little bit more about those of you who chose to spend your lunch hour with us today.
We do. Let's get started right away. So our first poll, just to get a sense of who's joining us today, we've got a couple questions to get started. If you'll take a moment, how many years has it been since you graduated from Roosevelt University or Robert Morris University for our new alumni to our Roosevelt alumni family? And if you're not an alum, but you're a friend of the university, we have an option for you to select also. So if you want to go ahead and select, give you a moment there to make your selection. And then we'll move on to the next question. How would you describe your level of employment where you currently are? Whether you're entry level down to the C-suite. And then our third question, if you manage other employees, how many do you manage? Finally, we're curious, what industry best describes the one that you work in? We've got a couple choices there for you. And if you work in other, and we haven't listed one for you, if you want to utilize that chat box at the bottom and go ahead and put the industry that you work in, I'm going to go ahead and take some notes for us to indicate what industry it is that you work in. We'll wait just another moment here. Looks like a few more people are adding in their choices. Still have about 10 more people to vote.
And Ann, we should have mentioned, my apologies, that these polls are anonymous, right? So we don't know.
Oh, thank you, yes.
What. Yeah.
Yes.
We don't know if you're making up an answer or whatever the case may be. The way that we'll use these, first of all, it's kind of fun, right? As part of our webinar today, but also to help us know who had the time and took the time to spend with us today for future programs. We'll get some more information from you on that.
It also helps us moving forward, knowing how to focus in our conversation.
Hi everybody, Ali here.
Ooh, hello there, boss.
Well, now I'm nervous. I wasn't before.
Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Oh,
Hello? This
Oh.
is Merle. I can't get you on the video. I'm sorry. I think I'm blocked by ad block. So
Okay.
I'm retired. I was a public school teacher for many years.
well, welcome.
Oh, hi, Merle.
Hi. I'm a Roosevelt graduate. I got my bachelor's from Roosevelt.
Wonderful. We
Wonderful.
won't ask the year, Merle.
No, you don't have to. Yeah, but like many or most of you, I am doing the social distancing,
Yes.
and I'd like to find out how other people are coping, as well as you probably want to know how I'm managing with this as well.
Great, great. That's what we're here for. And do you have the
Thank
results
you.
of the poll that you can share?
I think we do. It's people are slowly trickling in a few more. Let's go ahead and end this poll and share the results that we're looking at. So, interestingly, it looks like the majority of our people are considered friends of the university, which is wonderful to have joining us. And then after that, we have a great spread of people, don't we, that are joining with us today, with 12%, 0 to 3 years. And then look at that, 45% of our employees are mid-level employees,
Interesting.
with the overwhelming group of them not managing any employees at all.
Okay, great. Good to know.
And then I'm not surprised, the overwhelming majority are here involved in education.
Yes.
Look at that. But look at that, 9% in healthcare. So we so appreciate those of you in healthcare, because obviously you're on the front lines right now in some way, shape, or form.
Thank you, Ann. We'll have more polls coming up, so keep your mouse handy. Let's just review briefly a recap of history of remote work in the United States. Before the current health crisis, first of all, we know remote working is nothing new necessarily, but before the current healthcare crisis, about 4% of employees in the United States worked 1 or more days remotely on a consistent basis. Notice I'm not saying from home, because your remote workplace may not be your home. But we know that it's a growing trend. It's grown 44% in the last 5 years, 91% in the last 10 years. In 2015, 3.9 million workers in the United States were working 1 or more days remotely on a consistent basis. And before the last few months, that number had grown to 4.7 million, but that's still fewer than 4% of the 164.6 million workers in the United States. Right now, some states say as many as 80% of their workforce is still considered essential. So even though this is a new thing for many of us, particularly every single day of the week, there are so many employees who are still, of course, traveling every day to their place of work. In some states, again, as many as 80%. That surprised me when I saw this. And we know that there are some differences. Now, even those of us who work remotely, it hasn't been, quote, forced until now. And I think you have another poll ready to go. We'd like to get some additional feedback from those of you who tuned in today.
We are really curious, before the current health crisis, how many of you worked remotely at least 1 day a week on a regular basis? Oh, these are coming in fast and furious now.
People have a lot to say about this.
And I don't think you'll be surprised. Again, all of these polls are anonymous.
Right.
So we could end the polling right about now. And I think you can see the majority, 82%, but look at that, 18% did work remotely.
Which is actually higher than the national average. As I just mentioned, just a little less than 4% had been working remotely on a consistent basis, 1 or more days a week. So let's talk a little bit more about the differences these days, and I think the media has done a fine job of reminding us of these. Even those of us who work remotely, it wasn't forced until now. So we may not have been quite ready, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We may have either supports or distractions at our remote place of work. Maybe a spouse who's also trying to work remotely, or a roommate, or children. I was talking with another member of our Roosevelt community the other day. Okay, I'm going to be honest. She was helping me with a technology issue, and she was sharing with me that she and her brother and two parents are in the same household trying to work remotely. My question for her was, is your internet provider keeping up? You know, that's a real issue. So we have either support staff or distractions working remotely. And even if you are not working remotely, if you're considered one of those essential employees who does travel in every day, you still may be working remotely from others. And I think this is something we need to think about as well. I was speaking with a gentleman the other day, virtually of course, who works on an assembly line at a local factory. He typically works first shift. I think it's something like 6 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon. His employer now has moved from 2 shifts of employees to 3 so that they can physically spread the people apart a little bit more. So those are some differences as well. I'm sure once we're allowed to go to restaurants to eat again, there might likely be numbers that they can't move ahead of in terms of seating so that we can sit farther apart. And then there are many essential employees who their personal life dictates that even though they're essential, they cannot physically be around one another. And of course, even when we go to the grocery store, we're cautioned to maintain a particular social distance from one another. Another example of a business who's had to change their working hours, I was speaking with someone I know quite well who manages several banking establishments, and she was sharing with me that since they are physically closing some of their teller lines because the employees are physically too close to one another, they're having to expand their drive-through hours because they can't serve all their customers with the 2 drive-through windows they have at this particular location. Happens to be in central Illinois. So now what we have is not a remote way of working, it's a remote way of life. And it's a big change for almost all of us. And change happens. I'd like to see a show of hands, virtual hands if you're not on video. How many of you say you like change? I don't believe any of you who are saying that, because my personal belief is the only people who really like change are those who can control it. So one of the things we want to do is figure out in this environment that we're living in, how can we best control? What can we control? And how can we leverage it and use it to our advantage? If you study change, you know that there are several steps to change. We're going to run through these very briefly. There's something called the pre-contemplation, which means you're thinking about it, but you're not ready to change. Followed by your getting ready, that contemplation stage. Preparation, I'm ready, and then action. And of course, there are several steps after that. But if we think about that for a minute, pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, then action. We were all forced, and I don't mean we at Roosevelt, but we as a society were forced on a moment's notice almost to go from the 0 step to the 4th step right away, action. And how we handle all of that depends on who we are. And we know there are processes within change. You have to get facts. You have to pay attention to people's feelings. It's extremely important. And might I say that we as a society seem to be dwelling on that, in my estimation, maybe a little much. You have to create a new self-image, which is part of what we're trying to do in virtual meetings like this, right? Gives me a reason to get up and comb my hair and look good from the neck up anyway, or as good as I can. And we have to notice how we're affecting each other in this new environment. So Anne, I think you have a poll that we're asking some feedback on how our folks are feeling about this virtual environment, right?
We do. How are you feeling about remote work for yourself right now? You think it's working out great, or are you struggling with this whole new reality? And then I think you can move on to the next set of questions. When I scroll down on the poll, I'm curious, am I scrolling past, am I moving too quickly for people? I'm not quite sure if I move down, if that messes up everybody else's poll. No? Okay, thank you. The second question, if you manage a team, and I know the majority of you don't, but if you do, how are you feeling about managing a team remotely right now? Because a few people do, and we're curious to get a sense how that's working out. And then the last question. Oh, thank you, Dr. Ed. I see you've let me know that you can control the scroll also. Thank you, I appreciate that. And if you manage employees, how do you think they're doing right now? Take just another moment for everyone to go ahead and add their thoughts in there. Okay, I think everyone has just about had a chance. Let's take a look at these results. So I think it looks pretty good that for most people it's working out fine, but there are issues here and there. And with any technology, I think we all know there are going to be issues every now and then. Just yesterday, things had been working out wonderful for me, and then Comcast decided to have some outages. And I don't know if it was the wind or what it might have been yesterday, the thought that snow was coming perhaps, but there were some outages near me and the internet was spotty. And I thought to myself, thank goodness it was a day when I didn't have a lot of meetings scheduled. And it was working in the morning when I did. Although we do have fewer people that manage teams, we do see that for the most part, even though there are challenges, it is working out. And that's good news too, because none of us, as Mablene said, none of us were completely prepared for this. It did happen all of a sudden and we weren't quite ready, but I am really excited at the way not only our university was able to be prepared as quickly as they could, but other businesses also, the way they were able to jump to attention and get what they needed to be done. And then if you do happen to manage employees, how do you think they're doing right now? And it is good to see that no one chose, I don't know and I don't care. I did have to throw that one in there. I'm guessing we're all doing the best we can at this point, and I think that's a fair thing also to consider. Because at this point in time, we all are doing the best we can, no matter where we really are.
Thanks, Ann. I love the polls. We'll be interested to get your feedback about them throughout. Feel free to share that. One of the things I find most interesting is the response to that first question. Because remember when we asked how many of you had been working remotely prior to this healthcare crisis, it was almost this exact percent. Now, I don't know if those are the same people who are saying it's working great, those who've been used to it for a little bit, but I think that's very interesting. So we know that feelings are important. We share our feelings. We're hearing a lot about it on the news every single day. But let's try to flip this to how can we leverage it? There are some good things about social distancing also. Let's talk about that for a little bit. One statistic that's out there is before this healthcare crisis, for the folks who said they had been working remotely one or more days on a consistent basis in a remote way, 80% of them said they experienced less job stress. 80%. That's pretty amazing. And the majority of employers who had been allowing this said that it was good for business. I'm wondering if that has something to do with 80% of the employees feeling less stress, right? But it's good for business. So one of my hopes, and I'm sure you share this with me, is once we move forward as a society, that we'll be able to reflect on what can be best done remotely. certainly not everything, but might there be some additional flexibility? Change makes you think differently. And I'll be interested to hear from you. Feel free to feed this to us at any time. What are some good things that you have been able to leverage during this time of social distancing? We'll share some of that at the end of this presentation today. I'll tell you, for me, I'm not commuting an hour each way, an hour and a half each way. Is that a good thing? I never minded the commute, but my sleep patterns think it's a good thing, I'll tell you that. Another peer was telling me the other day that she figured out how much money she's saving between not spending money on gas, a metro ticket, a parking ticket, and she decided what was she going to do with that savings. And actually, this employee donated it to our Student Assistance Fund at Roosevelt University, which helps current students in need. But think about that yourself. What is good about social distancing? Another example I'll share, I was speaking just this morning to a friend who actually lives in Boston, who has two children in their 20s, who both live in New York, who now are home with him during this time. And he said he can't remember when the last time was they had dinner together as a family of 4 on a consistent basis. Feel free to let us know what you're doing or what you're experiencing that is a good thing.
I have a couple I could share right now if you don't mind.
Great, that'd be great.
In the chat. Now, Merle, did this come from you, Ampelant? I don't know if that's Merle.
That's okay.
I don't know who shared this one in the chat. She had mentioned that she did have some. Yeah, it is. Okay, this is from Merle. She had some Comcast outages for 8 days in January, which was horrible, but she was able to get a credit. She said work gave her a wireless hotspot, which was wonderful.
Wait a minute, it wasn't me. It wasn't me.
Oh, that's not you, Merle.
No, it's not me.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it wasn't me.
Okay.
And we told people this was anonymous, so it's okay if you don't want to say where it came.
So someone got a wireless hotspot from work, which is fabulous. Someone is saving on clothes, and their face is super excited and appreciating not having to wear makeup. Yes, I know that my skin is loving the chance of not having to wear makeup every day. Someone said deliberate and purposeful family time, even if it's virtual, is wonderful. I totally agree with that. It's been nice to be here and prepare my daughter's breakfast and lunch. That is wonderful, actually. I love that. And we have had the chance to sit down and have family dinner, which is something my family has really missed out. So that's been something really nice too. Let me see what else. Okay. One of my very good friends from the former Robert Morris, one of our new Roosevelt faculty members, says he likes his house and his wife even better now. There's eating healthy.
Well, I'm glad it wasn't the opposite, Anne.
Here's one of our alumni: eating healthier, working out more time with the daughter, saving money on commuting, saving money from eating out. Oh, wow, this is fabulous. Paying off 2 credit cards. So this all makes up for the new stress of homeschooling and remote working. Yes, I love that. That's fantastic.
Thank you. Keep them coming. We'll have an opportunity to share more as well. And you all are doing the hard work for me. I appreciate it. I would also say that if part of what you're doing is enjoying it, that's okay. That's okay. Enjoy this time, because yes, it too will end. I want to quickly move to how can we leverage this in an important way. And I want to talk about 3 different avenues. One is social or personal, one is work or professional, and one is building new connections. Let's talk about those for a minute here. Social or personal, family, friends. Another employee at Roosevelt was telling me that she gets up at 5 a.m. every day to exercise virtually with a group of friends. This employee also has a 5-year-old, so I think that might be how she stays sane. But she said she wouldn't trade it for anything. We mentioned FaceTiming or doing virtual happy hours. I personally have a virtual happy hour every other Friday afternoon with my three sisters. And you know what? I'm seeing them more in this virtual way than I have in years. We live in 4 different states. So it's really been great for me to come in closer contact with my sisters. Texting more frequently. I'm wondering how many times a day we might think of somebody we haven't thought of in a while and we reached out to them. We'll come back to setting goals in a minute. Let's talk next about work or professional connections. Our alumni online, or all of you are alumni of one institution or another. I wonder if you've thought about a former faculty member recently. Take a minute to reach out to them. I can tell you your faculty member at Roosevelt would love to hear from you, and we have some on this call, and I'm sure they're shaking their heads. Yes, they'd love to hear from former students. Reconnect with an alumni group. And one I was thinking about just the other day, think about who are the people on a daily or weekly basis you came across at your place of work that you're not in touch with now. Perhaps it was a forced connection. Maybe you had a monthly meeting that hasn't happened in this environment yet because other priorities have risen to the top. Or maybe it's not a forced connection, but somebody you walked by several times a day and said, hi, you know, how's your daughter? How are the parents? Maybe they were on the way to the restroom, or you saw them, you had lunch at 11:30 every day in the break room, or maybe during a smoke break or something. It's somebody you saw often. Have you lost touch? Try to reach out to them. And then new connections. I will say, what are we, in the 3rd or 4th week of this remote way of life? Maybe it's longer, who's counting? I have found this week in particular, people are very, very open to making a new connection. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to do this virtual meeting today. Anne and I have been authoring, to use the term loosely, weekly articles of our choice. Our first one was on managing remotely, and we have another few out on supporting wellness during remote work. And we have one that we're ready to publish next week. Again, I use publishing lightly. The topic of that one is, wait for it, be nice. And we'll come back to that in just a minute. But that's our way of reaching out. This week, I've received several emails from people saying they look forward to it. Quite frankly, they're not all that good. I don't think they would have said that a month ago. People are hungry for a new connection. And whenever you can in the virtual environment, I would suggest you use video because it's important. It's important to see eye contact. It's important to make that connection. Again, I think people are pretty judgment-free in the way that we all look right now. I know I can't wait to get my hair cut and my nails done, but that's a personal issue. So let's move very quickly to an action plan. Wait, I want to go backwards because Anne Bressingham, who's helping us out today, my chief of staff, is an expert at what I forgot to mention. My apologies. Sit through as many free webinars as you possibly can. There are all sorts of webinars out there right now, either provided by your work or by external free resources. Sure, they're going to contact you in 6 months and want you to purchase a subscription or something, but you can say no. There's so much out there right now that you can learn from. So, action plan. Why would you tune into Roosevelt University without expecting some homework, right? So there are 3 pieces of homework for you. One is set a calendar and some goals. Let's say you typically had a 3 p.m. meeting with your supervisor every Wednesday, and maybe that hasn't happened because we've all been moving through those first 4 stages of change, getting to the action plan. Make sure it gets set up. Ask that it continue. If you had standing meetings with your peers, keep them going. People will appreciate it. So set a calendar and goals is the first one. Get back in touch. That's the second. With someone on a personal nature, someone professionally, someone socially. Even every day, think about who have I not reached out to lately. And then thirdly, set a goal to make a new connection, whether it be personal, professional, or social. Now, each interaction should have a purpose, but staying in touch can be a purpose as well. Think about that yourself. How welcome would you receive a message that says, how you doing? Just want to stay in touch. Just this morning, I received an email from a professional I met in the Schaumburg area a couple of months ago at a very large business. She happens to be the director of procurement at that business, someone I want to stay in touch with. And her message was, thanks for your tips for your Tuesday, which is what we call our articles. Just want to know how you're doing. Can't wait till we can get together again. I appreciated receiving that, and I think she felt good sending it as well. Share positive things that happen. And I think you have something you want to show us from a positive nature, don't you? I don't know what happened to Anne. I hope she heard the compliment I gave her, but anyway, we'll come back to that.
Wait.
So remember, go ahead, Anne.
I wanted to share my screen, and I'm still new.
That's okay. I'll keep talking, and whenever you can share it, feel free to share it.
Here it comes. Can you see it?
Nope.
Wait for it. Wait for it.
Oh, it's coming. You can't see the whole thing. Maybe if I...
I'm working on it. I'm trying to get it over.
Ah.
There. Is this what I wanted to show you? It is what I wanted to show you.
It is what you wanted to show us. So a couple of examples of sharing positive things. And some of them, you see some folks that you might recognize on the right there, our Student Emergency Fund, and the fact that our university proudly donated what we could to our healthcare providers. The one on the left, someone sent this to me. It's a nurse that I know, who I know quite well. She's been a nurse for about 45 years, actually, which tells you my age frame. But anyway, she came out of the hospital where she works one day and saw these things written on the sidewalk. And I'm thinking, not only did it make her day and the day of all the healthcare providers who came out of that hospital, but I am sure that the kids and parents who created this, it made them feel good as well. I just love that. I can't wait to share it more widely. So again, remember that we are all social creatures. We're all social creatures. Even if we don't want to be, we really are. It's very important to us to maintain those social connections. So Anne, do you have anything else you can share from us from the chat? As you're looking for that, let me share a couple of other tips. Since we are social creatures, even if we think we're not, I'd ask that you do a couple of things too. Make sure that you have, and I'm going to call this person your buddy. It needs to be that one person who can tell you like it is. The person who can say, Mablene, you're in a crabby mood today and it doesn't really look good on you. Get over yourself, right? You need someone like that, particularly in this environment. Someone I was talking to the other day called it a strange environment. And I thought that was the best description I had heard yet. Strange is the right word. And then find a person that you can be that kind of a buddy to. Everybody can't do that, right? But who can you help out with saying, I'm here for you. Let's talk about what's troubling you, because when we get on this Zoom call with our employees, we need to be the best version of ourselves. And then I would also say, do something nice for someone today. I have a picture in my house that is the last thing I see when I leave and the first thing I see when I get home. And it says, one kind word can change someone's entire day. And I try to live by that. I think that's true, and I know you'd agree with me. So do something nice for someone today. I think we often forget that we're important to other people. And you know, a quote I just came across, I think says it so well. Remember, there's no such thing as a small act of kindness. Every act creates a ripple with no logical end. So please take a look at what's happening at your alma mater consistently. Check out the newsroom for those articles I mentioned that Anne and I are writing. locate us on LinkedIn if we're not already linked. I'm pretty new to that game, so trying to build my connections. And Anne, what other examples do you have before we close down things today?
There's a couple great examples.
Great.
So first of all, one of our participants mentions that her son calls her every day to see how she's doing, which she absolutely enjoys and loves. Also seeing family playing games together on Zoom. Zoom certainly has become, and it could be Zoom, it could be any of the virtual networking opportunities that are out there. Another one of our participants said the person who makes the difference for her is her 7-year-old daughter. She is the buddy that tells her when her attitude needs an adjustment, and kids are honest. Yeah, they sure are honest. I agree with you there. And the other thing is the articles that you were talking about that we've been working on there. If you go to the Roosevelt website and you look under the About section and look down, it's under Roosevelt Stories. And in our, in the second one, not the working remotely, but the wellness, supporting wellness article, there's some great links to a variety of different things that inside that article on connecting socially and doing a lot of different things. Like if you want some more tips on the virtual happy hours or how to do a bunch of different things, there's some really great tips in that article there. I don't see anything else. Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask? If you have any questions here or any other suggestions or things that you want to share?
And feedback is fine too. If we didn't have a minute or time, or perhaps it wasn't the appropriate venue to answer your question, we'll definitely look at those later and get back to you. Make sure you share with Christy and her team what future programming you would like to have. And Christy, we'll turn it back over to you.
Before we do, we have a participant. Is it South Africa I am seeing? We have someone from South Africa with it.
Wow.
And I think it says it's 7 p.m. there, and she participates in webinars and absolutely loves it.
Thank you for
Johannesburg. Wow,
Oh, thank you for
Johannesburg.
joining
That's
us. Wow.
fantastic. Thank you. Another participant says she really enjoys taking her granddog for a long walk every morning. That's fantastic. I think that's wonderful. Wow, we have got amazing participants today. This is wonderful. I had one other screen that I wanted to share. Actually, I think I'm going to put this up when we get to, I'm not going to share it now. I'm going to get it when, I want to share this when I turn over the reins.
Go ahead, Christy. I think we're ready for you.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Mablene. And thank you, thank you, thank you. It's so amazing to see how many have joined us, not only just within the Chicagoland area, but across the world. That is very exciting. And I know just that some of the tips that I've taken away here, I have a whole little notebook page filled with some great quotes and some tips. And one thing I know that I need to practice that kind of resonated with me as you were talking, Mablene, was that I'm interacting virtually with all of my peers in my office daily. But sometimes we're moving on from one kind of critical topic to the next that's business related. And I think there's some room for me just to also ask how things are going at home. Many of us have children and are juggling that, which is challenging in addition to working. So I really appreciated all of it. And that's just one takeaway from me. And I hope all of you here this afternoon have some takeaways as well. This is our first virtual event, and it was very exciting, and we'll continue to have more virtual events for our Roosevelt community, for alumni and friends. And I saw one question pop in, if there will be a charge for these events, and we do not anticipate having a charge for these. These are specifically for our community, and we have a couple upcoming webinars. And thank you so much for sharing. This Saturday, actually, we have an alumna, Julie Gentile, who will be sharing. She's a yoga and wellness professional, so she'll be doing an at-home yoga and self-care session. We have almost 100 already registered for that event, which is really cool. And then on Friday, April 24th, we have a session with faculty member John Fountain, who is going to be talking about telling social justice stories. So if you haven't yet, you can certainly register and participate for those events. And I also, in the chat box, I'm going to share the link to our Student Emergency Fund. As Mablene shared, we have many students who are in need at this time, and we've raised over $50,000. And if you're interested, I shared the link in the chat box. So thank you again, Mablene and Anne, for joining us, and for all of you for joining us this afternoon. Before we wrap up, I just want to ask if there are any last minute questions that either myself or Mablene or Anne can answer for you.
And thank you to all of you for joining us. And Christy, thanks for managing this for us. Couldn't have done it without you. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.